The sound of my old brass key scraping uselessly against a brand new silver lock was the exact moment my 30 years of maternal sacrifice shattered into a million jagged pieces. Welcome back to the channel, and before I tell you exactly how I systematically dismantled my daughter-in-law's cruel illusion of control, do me a huge favor and drop your city or country in the comments below. I absolutely love seeing how far these stories travel and connecting with you all. Now, let me take you back to that freezing, miserable Tuesday afternoon. The rain was coming down in thick, relentless sheets, soaking right through the shoulders of my wool coat as I stood on my own front porch. In my trembling arms, I held a damp cardboard box containing my favorite coffee mug, a framed photo of my late husband, and 20 years of accumulated office supplies. Just 2 hours earlier, the corporate accounting firm where I had dedicated 2 decades of my life informed me that my position was being eliminated in a company-wide downsizing effort. I was a 54-year-old widow, newly unemployed, and completely heartbroken. I had driven home in a daze, craving nothing more than the quiet sanctuary of the house I had worked so desperately to pay off. Instead, I found a shiny new deadbolt on my front door and a piece of heavy, expensive cardstock taped at eye level. The handwriting was full of looping, elegant letters that I instantly recognized as belonging to my daughter-in-law, Maya. The note read, "Since you no longer have an income to maintain this property, Leo and I are taking over as heads of the household. We need the space for our future. Please find transitional housing. We will send your clothes." I stood there, the freezing rain dripping down my nose, reading those words over and over again until they blurred together. A year ago, I had graciously allowed my passive son Leo and his ambitious new wife Maya to move into my spacious 4-bedroom suburban home. They had spun a sad tale about needing a temporary place to stay while they saved up a down payment for their own house. I wanted to be a supportive mother. I wanted them to have a strong start. But the saving never happened. Instead, Maya treated my home like a boutique hotel that I was simply staffing for her convenience. She slowly took over my kitchen with her exotic diets, pushed my vintage furniture into the garage to make room for her minimalist aesthetic, and treated me with a constant stream of thinly veiled, patronizing remarks. She viewed me not as the owner of the house, but as an outdated roommate she was eager to evict. And now, capitalizing on the very day I lost my job, she had made her move. I did not drop my cardboard box. I did not pound my fists against the heavy oak door and scream for my son to explain how he could let his wife lock his grieving mother out in the rain. Through the crack in the living room blinds, I could see the flickering, warm light of the fireplace. They were inside, sipping wine, waiting for the inevitable explosion. They wanted a show. They wanted me to cry and beg on the porch so they could feel powerful and justified in their cruelty. I refused to give them that satisfaction. I turned around, walked carefully down the slippery brick path, and put my cardboard box into the trunk of my 10-year-old sedan. I climbed into the driver's seat, turned the heater on full blast to stop my violent shivering, and slowly drove away. I drove to a 24-hour diner 3 towns over, a place with sticky tables and neon lights where nobody would recognize me. I ordered a black coffee and pulled my laptop out of my bag. My hands were finally steady. Maya and Leo thought that because I was suddenly unemployed, I was entirely powerless. They assumed that without a monthly paycheck, my authority over the household evaporated. What they conveniently forgot, or perhaps never truly understood, was that my late husband and I had paid off the mortgage entirely 5 years ago. I held the deed. The property taxes, the insurance, the utilities, everything was legally bound to my name. Furthermore, I had a substantial severance package and a robust emergency savings account that I had never bragged about. I opened my banking portal. When they first moved in, I had foolishly given them access to a joint credit card, strictly for household emergencies or picking up groceries if I was working late. I clicked on the recent transactions. In the last 48 hours alone, Maya had charged a premium hair salon appointment, a massive order of luxury skincare products, and a reservation at a high-end sushi restaurant. I felt a cold, sharp clarity wash over me. With a few deliberate clicks, I froze the joint card permanently. I then removed my name from their emergency backup accounts. Next, I logged into my utility providers. I downgraded the high-speed fiber internet, which Maya relied on heavily for her endless social media browsing and streaming, to the absolute lowest, slowest tier available. I changed the primary account passwords for everything. They wanted to be the heads of the household. They were about to learn exactly how much it costs to run one. I sat in that diner for 4 hours, drinking terrible coffee and meticulously severing every single financial convenience I had provided them. By the time I closed my laptop, the sun had set and the rain had turned into a thick, creeping fog. I drove back to my neighborhood, parking my car 2 blocks away in a dark cul-de-sac so they wouldn't see it in the driveway. I walked back to my property through the shadows of the large oak trees. Maya was clever enough to change the front and back door locks, but she was entirely too self-absorbed to remember the old storm cellar doors hidden behind the overgrown azalea bushes on the side of the house. My husband had built those doors decades ago, and they led straight into the unfinished basement. I lifted the heavy wooden hatch, crept down the concrete steps, and used my original brass key to unlock the interior basement door leading up to the kitchen. I stepped quietly into my own hallway. The house was dead silent. The grandfather clock ticked rhythmically in the corner. I walked silently up the carpeted stairs, heading straight for my master bedroom. The door was ajar. I pushed it open and had to bite the inside of my cheek to stop a gasp from escaping. They hadn't just locked me out. They had immediately started erasing me. My beautiful antique floral bedspread was shoved into a garbage bag in the corner. My nightstands were cleared. In their place, Maya had already dragged in her modern, cold-looking vanity mirrors and several boxes of her designer clothes. She was already measuring the space for her own furniture. It was a violation so profound it transcended anger and settled into a deep, icy resolve. I walked softly down the hall to the guest room where they had been staying. They were fast asleep, their breathing slow and steady. I did not wake them. Instead, I spent the next 3 hours working in complete silence. I dragged every single one of Maya's boxes out of my bedroom and stacked them haphazardly in the narrow upstairs hallway. I retrieved my beautiful bedding from the garbage bag and meticulously remade my bed, smoothing out every wrinkle. I locked my bedroom door from the inside, but before doing so, I walked over to the smart thermostat in the hall. Maya was incredibly sensitive to the cold and kept the house at a balmy 74 degrees. I removed the smart faceplate entirely, disabling her phone control, and manually set the internal dial to a brisk 60 degrees. Then I went into my bedroom, locked the door, climbed under my heavy blankets, and slept the deep, dreamless sleep of a woman who has nothing left to lose. I woke up at exactly 7 in the morning to the sound of frantic footsteps echoing in the hallway. Then came the sharp, unmistakable sound of Maya shrieking. "Leo! Leo, wake up! What is all my stuff doing in the hallway?" I sat up, poured myself a glass of water from my nightstand pitcher, and waited. A moment later, the handle of my bedroom door rattled aggressively. "Mom?" Leo's voice was muffled but thick with panic. "Mom, are you in there? How did you get in?" I stood up, smoothed my morning robe, and unlocked the door, pulling it open. Leo stood there in his pajamas, his hair a mess, looking like a terrified little boy. Maya was right behind him, wrapped in a thick winter blanket, shivering and glaring at me with absolute hatred. "What are you doing here?" Maya demanded, her teeth chattering slightly. "We left you a note. You don't live here anymore. I changed the locks." I looked at her, my expression completely blank. "You changed the locks on a house you do not own, Maya? That is called vandalism, and frankly, I am entirely unimpressed by your little stunt." I walked past them, making my way down the stairs to the kitchen. They scrambled to follow me. "Mom, listen," Leo stammered, rubbing his eyes. "Maya just meant that since you lost your job, you won't be able to afford the upkeep. We were trying to be proactive. We need to take over the primary bedroom so we can start our family. It makes logical sense." I reached into the pantry, pulled out my favorite coffee beans, and began grinding them. The loud noise of the grinder forced them to stand there in awkward silence until it finished. I poured the water into the filter and finally turned to face my son. "Leo, I own this house outright. There is no mortgage. I pay the taxes, I pay the water, I pay the electricity, and until yesterday, I paid for the very food your wife eats. My employment status is entirely irrelevant to my ownership of this property." Maya scoffed, stepping forward. "Well, you can't just break in. We have tenant rights. We've lived here for a year." "You are absolutely correct," I said calmly, leaning against the granite counter. "You are tenants, and as of this morning, your free ride is over." I reached into the pocket of my robe and pulled out a freshly printed document I had typed up at the diner. I slid it across the kitchen island. "This is a formal, legally binding, month-to-month lease agreement. The rent is set at the fair market value for a 2-bedroom occupation in this neighborhood, plus 2/3 of all monthly utilities. Your first payment is due in 3 days." Maya looked at the paper as if it were coated in poison. She picked it up, her eyes scanning the numbers, and her jaw dropped. "Are you out of your mind? We can't afford this. My car payment is $1,000 a month. We are saving for our own house." "Then you should have ample savings to draw from," I replied smoothly. "If you do not sign that lease and provide the first month's rent by Friday, I will file formal eviction papers on Monday morning. And if you ever touch my personal belongings or change a lock on my property again, I will have you arrested for trespassing and destruction of property." Leo looked pale. He looked back and forth between his furious wife and his unyielding mother. "Mom, please, be reasonable. Maya's credit card declined this morning when she tried to order her coffee. She was humiliated. My credit card declined, I corrected him softly, because it is my money. You are two grown adults demanding that an unemployed widow subsidize your luxury lifestyle while simultaneously trying to kick her out onto the street. You will never see another dime of my money. For the next 2 weeks, the house was a war zone of silent, passive-aggressive hostility. Maya refused to speak to me. She stomped around the house wrapped in massive sweaters, constantly complaining to Leo about the freezing temperatures, but unable to change the thermostat. When she tried to upload her aesthetic lifestyle photos to her social media, she found the internet so agonizingly slow that it took hours just to load a single page. She threw a massive tantrum in the kitchen one evening, slamming pots and pans, demanding the new Wi-Fi password. I simply sat at the dining table, completing a crossword puzzle, and told her that premium amenities were reserved for paying tenants. Without my invisible financial padding, their lavish lifestyle collapsed instantly. The daily organic food deliveries stopped. The weekend spa trips vanished. I heard them arguing bitterly late into the night, their voices carrying through the floorboards. Leo was stressed about money, and Maya was furious that her fantasy of taking over my beautiful home had been destroyed. On the morning of the 14th day, I came downstairs to find a signed copy of a different lease agreement on the kitchen island. It was for a cramped, overpriced, one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Leo was standing by the sink, looking utterly defeated. "We're moving out this weekend," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "We can't afford your rent." "I see," I said, pouring my coffee. "Please ensure you clean the guest bathroom before you hand over your keys. I expect it spotless." He nodded silently and walked away. 2 days later, a cheap rental truck pulled into my driveway. I sat on the front porch with a hot cup of tea, the weather finally sunny and crisp, watching them carry out their heavy boxes. Maya looked exhausted, her usual perfectly styled hair pulled back into a messy knot. She didn't look at me once. She didn't say goodbye. She just climbed into the passenger seat of the truck and stared straight ahead. Leo lingered by the steps for a moment. He looked like he wanted to apologize, like he finally realized the magnitude of his betrayal. But the words caught in his throat. He just gave a small, sad wave, got into the driver's seat, and drove away. That afternoon, I had a professional locksmith come and install heavy-duty security locks on every single door, including the basement. I spent the evening deep cleaning the guest room, erasing the last lingering scents of Maya's expensive perfumes. The house was finally quiet again. I had lost my job, and I had effectively lost the son I thought I knew. But as I sat in my favorite armchair by the window, watching the sunset, I didn't feel broken. I felt incredibly strong. I had protected my sanctuary, and I was finally ready to start the next chapter of my life on my own terms. So, what do you guys think? Was I too harsh with the rental agreement, or did they get exactly what they deserved? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to hit that subscribe button for more daily content.